Hi, and welcome to our virtual gardening program. My name is Diane Jaroch. I'm the Assistant Director and Adult Services Librarian at the Irvin L. Young Memorial Library in Whitewater, Wisconsin. Today our virtual gardening program is all about pumpkins. Pumpkins, pumpkins, pumpkins. I know that Halloween is over, but Thanksgiving is just a few days away. So I thought that since I had pumpkins left over from Halloween, that I would use them for decorations for my Thanksgiving table. They really make some wonderful, fresh arrangements. I don't know about you, but I've got some of these little pumpkins left, and I even have some medium-sized pumpkins left. My favorite pumpkin of all is this one, which is probably a gourd squash, not really a pumpkin, but they were selling them along with the pumpkin, so I bought it because I loved the shape and color of it. So that will be part of my decoration too. What I did for this large flower arrangement was I took a pumpkin, as you can see, and I put flowers in it, in a mason jar. So, took my pumpkin, cut the lid off, hollowed it out just like you would if you were going to carve a pumpkin. And then I took my mason jar that fit in there, and it fit in there perfectly, just nicely. Put the mason jar in there, put the flowers in the mason jar, or you could put the flowers in the mason jar and then put it in the pumpkin. And then I just arranged it how I thought it would look nice. And that is one thing you can do with pumpkins for your dinner table at Thanksgiving. And this makes a really nice centerpiece. And it's fresh. You get that smell of pumpkin, so it just makes things a little more festive. Now the little pumpkins I got a little more creative with. We're going to get the big pumpkin out of the way so that you can see how I did the little pumpkins. They all started out as these little decorative orange pumpkins. I painted one black, and I was going to decorate it further, but I really liked it just the way it was, black. So I thought, well, I'll just use it like that along with the other pumpkins in an arrangement. This one I took and I painted it white. I used acrylic paint. I used acrylic paint for the black one. The black one only took one coat of acrylic paint, I think because the black was just darker. I had to paint the white one twice, and I just took the acrylic paintbrush, and I just painted it. It didn't take any time at all, and it dried very quickly. I just used a set of acrylic paints that I had here. You can use any kind of acrylic paint, it doesn't matter. After I painted it, I decided that it needed a little something. I painted the stem brown because I thought that would make it stand out a little better. And I had these little leaves. I have some over here. They were just some leaves I got at Joann's, and I just stuck 2 of them on. Took a little piece of paper I had that said thankful, cut that out, punched a hole in it, and hung it off as a tag. And that will be part of my table decoration as well. I'm going to move these so I can show you the next decorations that I made. Those little pumpkins, the little orange pumpkins, are really nice, very versatile. You can do a lot with them. I don't know if you ever thought about cutting into them and carving them just like you would the big pumpkins, but you can, and watch what can happen when you do that. So I have this set up here. It's a little plate I had. I put some stones around it and those little glittery leaves that I was showing you. I have them in 4 different colors. And then I just put that around the plate. For the pumpkin, you can do a couple of different things. This one, I put some succulents in. These are not real succulents, these are fake succulents, so they were really easy to poke in. And we're gonna deconstruct this one. So I just took them, poked them in. I'm gonna take them out because I'm gonna show you another thing that you can do. You can take your pumpkin, you can take a little candle holder, and you can use a real candle or a fake candle. I have a little lit candle here. Put that in there. And then you have, the pumpkin becomes a candle. Very quick and easy. The hardest part was probably carving that tiny little pumpkin just because it's so tiny it was kind of hard to work with. But I really like how it turned out. I thought it turned out really well. And I really can't tell you what I like better. Do I like it with the candle in it or do I like it better with the succulents? And again with the succulents, I just took the succulents I had. I just pushed them into the sides. Nothing fancy. That one poked into the bottom very nicely. And if you had a live succulents, you'd probably want them in a little container, kind of like I have the little tea light, and then set that inside of it. Something a little different than your normal Thanksgiving decorations, or for any time really. It doesn't have to be for Thanksgiving. Anytime you just want to change things up. There we go. There we've got our little fresh little different Thanksgiving arrangement. Those are the decorations that I have today. Next, we're going to move on to some tasty treats. Now, when you carve the pumpkin, don't throw those seeds away because those seeds are very tasty and very nutritious. What you do is you separate them from the membrane, from the guts, and you wash them off, rinse them off. I use a colander or strainer. Wash them off, put them on a pan. You do want to dry them, pat them dry with paper towel. So you wash them, pat them dry with a paper towel, put them on a oiled baking sheet, or you can use foil like I did. And then we're going to get our olive oil. I'm going to move this guy, he's in the way. We're going to take our olive oil. We're going to drizzle some olive oil on our seeds. And I like salt and pepper on my seeds. If you like cinnamon or cinnamon and sugar, chili powder, whatever you want to put on your seeds. We'll shake a little pepper on here, a little salt. You roast these in the oven at like 400 degrees for about 20 to 30 minutes, probably 30. That's what it took last time when I made them. And there you go, you have a nice little healthy snack and you aren't wasting the seeds from your pumpkin. Everybody loves pumpkin pie, but I thought today that it would be nice to make pumpkin bars. So that is going to be what we make next. Let me get my seeds put down. I'm going to grab my bowl over here. And I have my recipe. Let me read you the recipe. Pumpkin bars are a really nice, somewhat healthy snack because the pumpkin is so good for you, full of lots of vitamins, high in fiber. Never hesitate to eat anything with pumpkin because it's good for you. And a little sugar won't hurt you. So this is my recipe that I got from my friend Brittany. And it calls for 1 can of pumpkin, 15 ounces. So this is my 15-ounce can of pumpkin. Calls for 2 cups of sugar. I have measured out 2 cups of sugar here. 1 cup of oil. And I happen to use canola oil simply because that's what I had on hand. I didn't want to use olive oil. I think vegetable oil or canola oil works better when you're baking something that's like a cake or the pumpkin bars. 4 eggs, and you want to take all of those 4 ingredients and beat them until fluffy. And you don't worry if there's some lumps in there. That's not going to hurt anything. It doesn't have to. You don't want to overbeat this, or it'll be more like a cake. You also don't want to use too much flour or too many eggs. And when I measure out the flour for you, I will show you a little trick that I learned so that you get just the exact amount of flour. I've also heard if you measure the flour on a scale, that gives you a more precise measurement. So after we get our eggs, sugar, pumpkin, and oil, next you need 2 cups of flour, 2 teaspoons of baking powder, 2 teaspoons of baking soda, 2 teaspoons of cinnamon, and 1/2 teaspoon of nutmeg, ground cloves, and ginger. I had both the ground cloves and the ginger, but I did not have the nutmeg. So I looked up some different recipes and found that instead of that, you can use a teaspoon of pumpkin pie spice. And that, I had several containers of that because I only use it a couple times a year. You want to mix all of that together, bake at 350 for 18 to 22 minutes. I'm gonna go ahead and say 18 to 30 minutes because my oven tends to cook things very slowly. So I found that I have to cook them much longer than what the recipes always show. Put it in the pan, cook it. When you can insert a toothpick or a knife and it comes out clean, then you know that they're done. And you don't want to overcook them because then they won't be moist. What really makes this a delicious treat is the cream cheese frosting. I don't know why, but the pumpkin and the cream cheese go together very well. The frosting consists of 2 cups of powdered sugar, a stick of butter, and 2 packages of cream cheese, and 2 teaspoons of vanilla. Now you want to make sure that your butter and your cream cheese have sat out at room temperature and are nice and soft so that they mix up well. You want to mix them all together till they're fluffy, and then once your bars are cool, spread the cream cheese frosting on there and you have a wonderful treat. My friend Brittany made some last weekend and brought us some, and they were just delicious. And I knew that was what I was going to do for this program today. So let's get our pumpkin bars mixed up. And I'll read the recipe again when we're done mixing up and as we go on. So it calls for 2 cups of sugar. I measured that out already. A can of pumpkin. I've got that right here. And again, don't forget to wash your hands before you cook. I washed mine right before I started, so I think we're okay. And if you hear little footprints in the background, that's my English bulldog. He's coming to visit me. His name is Angus. If you follow along on Facebook, you've probably seen pictures of him. He really likes to have his picture taken with books and audiobooks because he loves to read. Well, he doesn't read, but he loves to be read to. So he's standing here by me, and I don't know, he's got the funniest little footsteps. He just pitter-patter, pitter-patter. So if you hear pitter-patter, that's my English bulldog. So we're going to mix up the pumpkin. Again, that was 1 can, 15 ounces of pumpkin. This that I'm using is pure pumpkin. They also say that pumpkin puree is good to use. Apparently there is some that is pumpkin mix, and that you want to avoid simply because you're going to be adding all the other ingredients that you need to it. So we're going to get this mixed up. Again, pumpkin is very healthy, high in beta carotene, it is a vegetable, lots of vitamins. So I've got my sugar and I've got my pumpkin. So next I'm going to add my oil. 1 cup of oil. Today I'm using canola oil. I'm going to add that to our bowl. And we're going to mix that up some more. And it mixes up very easily. The pumpkin is very soft, so that makes it nice. Makes all the ingredients come together well. And I'm mixing this up thinking hopefully my bowl is going to be big enough for the flour and everything. Well, if not, we'll find out, won't we? So I'm going to get that mixed up well. I'm having to use my left hand. I've been having some issues, some tendonitis in my right wrist, so some motions my wrist doesn't like to do. Get that mixed up. But let me tell you, it's really hard to switch from your dominant hand to your non-dominant hand. It takes a little getting used to. So now let's put our 4 eggs in. Got my 4 eggs right here. Gonna dump those in. And you can probably hear my bulldog. He's snuffling here next to me. Bulldogs are very noisy and they sleep a lot, but he's the sweetest dog. And they're very much people dogs. They want to be right where you are doing whatever you're doing. So I got my pumpkin, can of pumpkin, 2 cups of sugar, a cup of oil, 4 eggs. I'm gonna get that all mixed up. One thing I found interesting about this recipe is the recipe itself did not call for vanilla. So many recipes do. However, the frosting has vanilla in it. So we're going to get this mixed up. You could use a hand mixer or a mixer. Again, like I said, you don't want to overmix, especially when you're mixing in the flour. And it's okay if it's a little lumpy. Okay, that's mixed up pretty well. So now we're going to add our dry ingredients. We need 2 teaspoons. I'm going to do the smaller stuff before I do the flour. 2 teaspoons of baking soda. Sprinkle that in there. 1, 2, I'll double check my recipe before I throw the other one. Yes. We need 2 teaspoons of baking powder. This again is kind of interesting. Most recipes use one or the other. This recipe uses both. 2 teaspoons of that. And we need a teaspoon of cinnamon. And you can hear my dog. Oh yeah, he's found himself something to play with. So just ignore the noises you hear in the background. Got a teaspoon of cinnamon here. And we need our ground ginger, our ground cloves, and a ground nutmeg. That calls for half a teaspoon of each of those. And again, because I don't have them all, I'm using the pumpkin pie spice. And the pumpkin pie spice calls for 1 teaspoon. I'm going to open this up. Get a teaspoon of that out. I love the way pumpkin pie spice smells. Pumpkin pie and pumpkin bars are some of my favorite fall desserts. Okay, let's get that mixed up a little bit, and then we're going to add our flour, and then we're going to be ready to throw it in our greased pan. And it's best to use a pan, the longer jelly rolls type pan that you would do like a sheet cake in. That is a good size. It doesn't really matter what size, obviously. That will just determine how thick your bars are. And the thinner bars are a little better than the thicker bars, and they'll be a little more moist and less cake-like, which the whole purpose of making bars is so they aren't like a cake. We're making pumpkin bars, not pumpkin cake. I've got that mixed up. I think a hand mixer would probably work really well right now, but we're just going to use our hands. Okay, next we need our flour. Now I told you about that trick about the flour, getting the precise measurement. So let's do that. This is how I was taught to do it. Take your flour, get that scooped up, and I actually have 2 cups measured out here. I need to use my other hand. I just can't maneuver with that. So you've got your flour in there, and I'm sure many of you know this trick already. We're just going to level it off with a knife. But that way you aren't guessing, you aren't like, oh, a little more won't hurt. Usually it doesn't hurt. But in the pumpkin bars, if you use more flour than you should, it's going to be more like cake than a bar. We're going to sprinkle that in, and I'm going to like stir it, put the knife down, stir as I am making this. That's mixing up nicely. Put my measuring cup down because I don't need that. We're going to switch back to the left hand. There we go. We can get a little better movement. I'm going to get this mixed up, and then we're going to get the other cup of flour put in here. And then we'll be ready to put this in a greased baking dish and throw it in a 350-degree oven. I'm very excited. My family was very happy too to hear that we were making pumpkin bars. To tell you the truth, I believe this is the first time I've ever made pumpkin bars. We've been lucky, and other people always make them for us. Okay, let's add our 2nd cup of flour. Oh, and I'm so excited, my bowl is big enough for everything. Barely big enough. A little larger bowl would have been nice. Get that mixed up. I think that my puppy can smell the pumpkin and is like, wow, that smells good. Is that right, Angus? You're going to help me taste test the pumpkin bars when they're done? Yeah, you will. You're a good taste tester. That is mixing up very nicely. I'm very happy with that, considering I have a bum hand. Okay, we're going to, again, do a little better smush. As you can see, it is a little lumpy, but not lumpy. It's just more coarse looking than smooth, which is perfectly fine. Gonna give it another little, get the sides. And this smells wonderful with those spices in there. I'm very excited. We have a good dessert tonight. All right, Before I put this into our pan, how about I read the recipe one more time so that we can write it down if you need to. This calls for a can, 15-ounce can of pumpkin, 2 cups of sugar, a cup of oil, and 4 eggs. And you want to beat those 4 ingredients until it's fluffy. After that, you add in 2 cups of flour, 2 teaspoons of baking powder, 2 teaspoons of baking soda, 2 teaspoons of cinnamon, and a 1/2 teaspoon of nutmeg, ground cloves, and ginger, or you can substitute a teaspoon of pumpkin pie spice. Mix those together, put them in your baking pan. Bake at 350 degrees for 18 to 30 minutes. The recipe says to 22 minutes, but I'm going to say 30 because I know it's going to take 30 minutes for my oven to cook it. All right, let's get our baking pan. I'm going to set this down so that I can get my pan because it's kind of large. Got that right behind me. There we go. Now we put it in the pan and then we get to put it in the oven. I'm excited. Just gonna spoon that in. As I mentioned, it just smells wonderful. Makes me want to just take a couple spoonfuls right now. Okay, I think we got that pretty well. Set that down. As I get out of the picture screen, I'm still here, just move to the side. Obviously my setup here isn't made for cooking demonstrations, but it's okay, it works just fine. There we go. We've got our pumpkin bars. They are all set to go. Again, we're going to cook this 350-degree oven for anywhere from 18 to 22 to 30 minutes. And when you're done, you want to make that wonderful cream cheese frosting. And I misplaced my recipe. There it is. Frosting, 2 cups of powdered sugar, a stick of butter, 2 packages, the 8-ounce packages of cream cheese, and 2 teaspoons of vanilla. And you want to make sure the butter and the cream cheese are at room temperature and really soft so that they mix up really nicely and get really fluffy. And once your bars are cool, and you can transfer this to a wire rack when it's done. When it's cool, put the cream cheese frosting on. Got a nice treat. Because it has the cream cheese frosting though, you do need to keep them refrigerated. And you should not keep them out longer than 2 hours at a time. So when you have a bar, be sure that you put the rest away in the refrigerator for later. That's it. That's our pumpkin program. I hope that you got some good ideas on how to decorate and learned a couple tasty new treats. And I hope you all have a good Thanksgiving. Thank you so much for watching today. And join us next time for our next pumpkin program. Thank you.